Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of HD Cast, your trusted source for the latest insights in emerging tech. I'm your host Harshdeep and today we're tackling a topic that's as fascinating as it is crucial. The hidden ideologies embedded within our AI language models. You know those AI assistants, right, we interact with daily? Whether it's for summarizing news articles or answering burning questions or just chatting about the weather. They're powered by large language models or LLMs trained on vast amounts of data to generate human-like responses. But have you ever stopped to wonder if these models carry their own set of beliefs or even biases? Well, a recent research report by Meta delves deep into this very question, and the findings are both surprising and thought-provoking. LLMs have become indispensable in our daily lives, acting as gatekeepers of information. Yet their behavior isn't uniform, it varies based on their design, the training, and the data they are fed. This variability raises pressing concerns about the ideological stances these models exhibit and how that affects the information we receive. So, what's the essence of this Meta's research that we're talking about? Well, they set out to uncover the ideological diversity among different LLMs and to see if these models reflect the worldview of their creators. To achieve this, they prompted a diverse panel of popular LLMs to describe a large number of prominent and controversial personalities from recent world history. And here's the kicker. They did this both in English and Chinese to observe any differences that might arise due to language and cultural context. By analyzing the moral assessment in these descriptions, the researchers found consistent normative differences between how the same LLM model responded in Chinese compared to that in English. They also noticed disagreements between Western and non-Western LLMs when it came to the prominent figures involved in geopolitical conflicts. Furthermore, the disparities in political goals among Western models were reflected in significant normative differences related to inclusion, social inequality, and political scandals. So, what does all of this mean? Well, essentially, the ideological stance of an LLM often mirrors the worldview of its creators. This realization raises the important concern about the efforts to make LLMs ideologically unbiased and the political risks of political instrumentalization. If these models are shaping how we access information, their embedded biases could have far-reaching implications for the society at large. So, let's try and unpack this a bit. Creating an LLM involves numerous human design choices that can intentionally or inadvertently embed particular ideological views. These choices include the model's architecture, the selection and the curation of training data, and the post-training interventions like reinforcement learning from human feedback or even system prompts designed to prevent unwanted outputs. Philosophers like Michael Foucault and Antonio Gramsci have long argued that notion of ideological neutrality is ill-poised and potentially harmful. Chantal Mouffe, for instance, critiques the idea of neutrality and advocates for agnostic pluralism, a democratic model that embraces political differences rather than suppressing them. In light of this, Meta's research aims to gauge the impact of LLMs as gatekeepers of ideological thought on the democratic process in society without labeling any LLM more neutral or biased than the other. Now, quantifying the ideological position of an LLM in a natural setting isn't quite straightforward. Past research often involved directly questioning LLMs about their opinions on normative issues or ethical dilemmas. However, responses to such direct questions tend to be inconsistent and highly sensitive to how the prompt was phrased. Now, this inconsistency suggests that traditional models may not accurately reflect an LLM's behavior during everyday use. So, what did Meta's researchers do differently here? Well, they adopted a more open-ended approach to illicit ideologies. Instead of directly probing the models with leading questions, they had the LLMs describe a wide variety of political personalities, aiming to capture the implicit moral assessments in a way that's closer to the natural interaction. Now, they used the Pantheon dataset, which is a comprehensive database of historical figures from various fields sourced from Wikipedia, as their primary source for selecting political figures. After applying specific criteria to ensure representativeness and relevance, they ended up with a list of 4,339 political figures. Now, this list included a mix of politicians, activists, military personnel, and other influential individuals from all across the world. Now, to maintain ecological validity, that is, to make sure that the experiment setup closely mirrors the real-world scenario, they designed a two-stage experiment. In stage 1, they simply asked the LLM to please describe the person, which is without any additional instructions or revealing the study's intent. And in stage 2, they presented the stage 1 response back to the same LLM in a new conversation and asked it to determine any moral assessment present in the description itself. Now, this approach allowed them to analyze the moral judgment implicitly embedded in the model's response. So they conducted this experiment on a panel of 17 LLMs, querying each in both English and Chinese. And these models included well-known ones like OpenAI's GPT-4, Meta's Llama, Google's Gemini, and models from tech giants in China like Alibaba's Qwen and Baidu's ErnieBot. So for data analysis, they employed three main strategies. First, they computed the average response for each ideological tag for each respondent, that is, each LLM and language pair. Then they created two-dimensional biplot using principal component analysis or PCA to visualize the ideological diversity among the respondents. And this biplot provides a global overview highlighting how the different ideological tags explain the diversity observed in the set. In their second and third analysis, they targeted specific hypotheses about whether an LLM's creator influences its ideological position. And they split the respondents into subgroups based on language, region, or company, and examined how these factors might affect the moral assessment given to the political figures. So let's move on to the key findings now. One of the most intriguing findings is how the ideology of an LLM can vary significantly based on the language in which it is prompted. Imagine asking the same question to an AI model in English and then in Chinese, and receiving responses that reflect different ideological stances. That's exactly what the researchers observed. For 14 out of the 15 LLMs tested in both languages, the models prompted in Chinese exhibited a distinct ideological position compared to that of English counterparts. Specifically, the Chinese prompted models tend to rate certain political figures more favorably or unfavorably, highlighting the systematic ideological differences influenced by language itself. For example, political figures who are adversarial towards mainland China like Jimmy Lai and Nathan Law receive significantly higher ratings from the models prompted in English than those prompted in Chinese. And conversely, figures aligned with mainland China such as Deng Xiaoping and Ye Zhongjing were rated favorably by the Chinese prompted models. This pattern suggests that the language of interaction doesn't just serve as a medium of communication here, but also carries cultural and ideological underpinnings that influence the model's responses itself. And this is a stark reminder of how deeply language and culture are intertwined even in AI systems today. But let's try to thicken the plot here. The researchers went further to explore whether an LLM's ideological stance is also influenced by the region where it is developed, independent of, let's say, the prompting language now. They compared models from Western companies with those of non-Western companies, all prompted in English, to see if the regional biases persisted in that scenario. And they did. Western models showed a tendency to rate political figures associated with liberal democratic values like freedom, human rights, equality more positively than non-Western models. And on the other hand, non-Western models were favorable towards figures associated with centralized economic governance and national stability. So for instance, Western models were more supportive of political figures tagged with freedom and human rights and environmentalism, reflecting the values often emphasized in Western societies. While non-Western models, however, showed higher ratings for tags like supply-side economics, nationalization, indicating a preference for state-led economic policies. And even more interesting is that these differences were evident even when the interaction was in English. So this suggests that an LLM's ideological leanings are not just a product of the language data it's trained on, but also reflects the cultural and political context of its creators. Design choices like training data selection, model fine-tuning, and alignment processes could all contribute to these embedded biases. Now, the researchers also explored ideological variations among Western LLMs themselves. They wanted to see if the models developed in the same cultural region and the prompted in same language would still exhibit ideological differences. And it turns out they do. For example, OpenAI's models showed a distinct ideological stance compared to other Western models. They were more critical of supranational organizations and welfare policies, implying a certain skepticism towards these concepts. Conversely, other Western models leaned more towards liberal democratic values like human rights, diversity, and inclusion. Similarly, Google's Gemini model exhibited a strong preference for social justice and inclusivity, rating tags like peace, minority groups, and human rights more positively than any other Western model. This reflects a focus on progressive values often associated with current social movements. Even among the models developed in the same region, these differences highlight how these design choices and company values can influence AI's ideological stances. It's not just about where the model is from, but also about specific perspectives of its creators. So, what are the implications of these findings? Well, firstly, it's clear that the choice of the LLM isn't a neutral decision. The model you use can influence the information you receive, especially on topics with ideological significance. This has implications for fields like journalism, education, policy making, where impartiality is crucial. Secondly, efforts to regulate or enforce neutrality in AI models need to be approached more carefully. Since neutrality itself is a culturally and ideologically defined concept, attempting to enforce it could lead to unintended consequences or even political misuse. Instead, perhaps the focus should be on transparency and promoting diversity of models that reflect different perspectives. This aligns with the idea of agnostic pluralism, where a healthy democracy embraces a variety of viewpoints rather than suppressing them. And for AI developers, this research highlights the importance of being mindful about the ideological stances their models might project. It opens up opportunities to fine-tune models to align with their desired values or to develop tools that allow users to understand and adjust the ideological leanings of AI they're interacting with. Now, achieving complete neutrality in AI systems might be fundamentally impossible, as neutrality itself is a contested concept. Philosophers and social theorists argue that every system carries inherent biases, whether acknowledged or not, and I sort of seem to agree with that. In context of AI, these biases can stem from the data used for training, the algorithms implemented, and even the objectives set during the development phase. Moreover, the attempt to create a neutral AI could suppress minority viewpoints or reinforce dominant ideologies. It's crucial to recognize that striving for neutrality might actually lead to homogenization of perspectives, which can be detrimental to a pluralistic society. Now, in light of these challenges, embracing ideological diversity in AI models could be a more productive approach, as we discussed. By promoting a plurality of viewpoints within AI systems, we can develop models that are better representing human thought. This approach encourages AI to present multiple perspectives on contentious issues, allowing users to engage with a range of ideas and form their own informed opinions. For example, when an AI is asked about a controversial political figure, it could provide a balanced overview that includes both positive and negative assessments from various cultures and ideological perspectives. This not only enriches the user's understanding but also fosters critical thinking. This research also prompts us to consider the ethical implications of AI development and deployment. As users, we need to be aware that the AI tools we rely on might carry inherent biases shaped by perspectives and decisions of their creators. And for developers and regulators, it underscores the importance of transparency and the need to engage with philosophical debates surrounding neutrality and bias. In the broader context, this study highlights the complexities of aligning AI systems with societal values. It suggests that we should focus on creating AI that is transparent about its sources and limitations, allowing users to critically assess the information provided. Now, moving forward, there is a need for collaborative efforts between technologists, ethicists, policymakers, and users to navigate the ethical landscape of AI. Developing standardized frameworks for evaluating and disclosing the ideological leanings of AI models could be a significant step towards greater transparency. Moreover, expanding research to include languages, cultures, and models would provide a more comprehensive understanding of how AI systems reflect and influence global perspectives. This could involve partnerships across countries, organizations to share data and methodologies and even insights. But let's try and push the conversation even further. We've been exploring how AI models can carry the biases of their creators and the languages they're trained in. But what happens if AI starts developing its own biases and learning independently? Well, you can imagine an AI system that over time begins to evolve, beyond their initial programming. They start picking up on patterns, making connections that weren't explicitly encoded by the developers. Now, this self-learning capability could lead AI to form its own set of biases shaped by the data it encounters and the interaction it has with users and maybe other systems as well. And this scenario opens up a whole new set of challenges. If AI begins to develop biases autonomously, these biases might not align with human values or even societal norms. For instance, an AI which is exposed to, let's say, negative or harmful content could start to reflect those perspectives even if unintentionally. This could amplify misinformation, reinforce stereotypes, or even propagate extremist values without any human prompting. Moreover, self-developed biases in AI could be harder to detect and mitigate. Since these biases won't stem from the original training data or programming, tracing their origin becomes way more complex. And it also raises the question about accountability, right? Who is responsible when an AI behaves in unexpected ways or even undesirable ways? Is it the original developers? Is it the user who interacts with it? Or is it the AI itself? That's a burning question that we all have to answer. So, what can be done about this potential issue? One approach is to implement robust monitoring and regulation of AI learning processes. Developers could design AI systems with built-in checks that detect and correct emerging biases. There could also be industry-wide standards for ethical AI development, emphasizing transparency and more accountability. Another important aspect here is user awareness. Educating people about how AI systems work and the potential for biases can empower users to critically evaluate the information they receive. Encouraging diverse inputs and perspectives in AI development teams can also help mitigate the emergence of unintended biases. Ultimately, as AI continues to evolve, we need to evolve our approaches to governance and ethics alongside. By proactively addressing the possibility of AI developing its own biases, we can strive to harness the benefits of self-learning AI while minimizing the risk. So, as we navigate this brave new world where AI plays an increasingly significant role in shaping our access to information, understanding these nuances become even more important. AI doesn't just exist in a vacuum, it's a product of human endeavor, reflecting our complexities, biases, and perspectives. Recognizing this is crucial for developing the AI that serves humanity in the most equitable way possible. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of hidden ideologies within the AI language models. It's a fascinating and critical topic as we continue to integrate AI into our daily lives. If today's episode sparked any ideas or even questions, I'd love to hear from you. Let's keep this important conversation going. So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep tuning in to HDcast. Goodbye and take care.